Next, could the capital's hotels be used to protect the UK from mutations of the virus? The Prime Minister confirmed it's definitely being considered. As our political correspondent Simon Harris reports, this is just one measure among others being considered to ensure the rate of infection continues to drop.
Lockdown has been a disaster for London hotels, but now there could be an urgent need for thousands of rooms close to Heathrow. Best Western is one chain offering some of its hotels as quarantine hostels for air passengers arriving from abroad.
We want to make sure that we protect our population, protect this country against reinfection from abroad. So that idea of looking at hotels is certainly one thing that we're actively now working on.
Australia has been operating quarantine hotels for months. This is the luxury Hyatt in Perth, where a London journalist visiting his family was confined to a room for 14 days at a cost of around £100 a night.
You just can't think outside the day. So like say on day 3, if you think, oh my God, I've got 11 days to go, then you just go into like a blind panic. So you just can't think past the hour, basically.
Quarantine hotels will be on the agenda when senior ministers meet tomorrow. They're also under pressure to name a date for schools to reopen and make a final decision on the postponed election for London Mayor. For now, the London mayoral election on May the 6th is going ahead, but the government is keeping it under review. And ministers have already decided that door-to-door campaigning and leaflet delivering won't be allowed under current lockdown rules.
Hi sir, how are you?
That seems to have come as a shock to a man called Brian Rose, who says he's planning to stand as an independent candidate. But when he took his battle bus on a campaign visit to the City of London, the police weren't impressed.
I've been given a fine for violating this, and we will be stopping to do this as of right now.
The election poses a number of challenges. How do you count the votes and still allow the candidate's supporters to get close enough to scrutinise the process? But it's the ban on door-to-door campaigning and leafleting which has angered some parties.
There's a fundamental democratic principle at play here, which is that if it's not safe to campaign, then it's not fair to hold the elections.
Lockdown might be over when the official election campaign gets underway, but the tier system is likely to return, and that will pose its own problems. Simon Harris, ITV News.
The government's refusing to bow to pressure from MPs and teachers to give a clear date when schools will reopen. The current lockdown will be reviewed on February the 15th, but there's no guarantee that children will be back in the classroom before Easter. From Morden, our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
Eugene, did you get onto the maths test?
Lockdown lessons can be hard work.
It's been really boring and I really need my friends.
And not just for pupils.
Homeschooling is horrendous. Homeschooling is really catastrophic for the kids and also for us as well.
At the family home in Herne Hill, Amelia is engaged in a daily juggling act, trying to run her ad agency and making sure her sons Felix and Eugene are on top of their schoolwork.
It's just impossible. It's really impossible with primary school children. You need to be there for them. They've got questions. They get hungry. They get bored. They get lonely. They want to talk about stuff.
And even without those distractions, not to mention the cats, there are the IT issues.
Yeah, that's weird. The maths test is locked.
Quite a lot of the time when we've been doing home learning, the Wi-Fi cuts off, so we're not able to do lots of our work.
Break time at Morden Primary, and there's the almost forgotten sight and sound of children at play. They're from the same class, so this is allowed. But most pupils are at home.
OK, boys and girls, it's time to mute your cameras now.
It's Australia Day, and head teacher Peter has a story for her virtual audience.
Nope. Kevin preferred not to move, nor to change.
This is as close as Morden Primary can get to an assembly. Vulnerable pupils and the children of key workers in the classroom, everyone else is online. In the last 2 weeks, the number of Londoners testing positive for COVID has almost halved. But children, parents and teachers still have no idea when school life will return to normal. Can you run a safe school?
We can do our best. We can try our best. If we were vaccinated, I think staff would feel safer.
What difference would having a jab make?
Oh, massive. I think confidence levels for all staff in school you know, to know that we had that extra protection.
In Parliament, a minister repeated the government's message that schools will reopen only when it's safe. Until there are fewer COVID patients in hospital, classrooms will stay empty. Simon Harris, ITV News, Morden.
Next tonight, HS2 protesters have been living in a campsite outside Euston Station since April, but today the operation to remove them was sped up. It comes after demonstrators revealed they are hoping to delay the £106 billion project with a 100-foot wartime-looking tunnel, which is hidden inside one of their tents. HS2 responded by sending in bailiffs, as our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
In the trees above Euston Square Gardens, bailiffs began the tricky task of prizing out determined protesters. One by one, anti-HS2 activists were lowered to the ground in cherry pickers. But the real challenge for the eviction squads isn't up in the air, it's below ground.
So here we are, down the tunnel.
This is Larch Maxey, one of the amateur tunnellers who've dug a network of underground passages to try to frustrate construction work on the new HS2 station. The main tunnel is said to run for 100 feet. At least 4 activists have locked themselves in. The bailiffs are digging towards them. And when I spoke to Larch Maxey on the phone, he said they were getting close.
If they carry on as they're doing, they will endanger our lives because they will risk a collapse of that tunnel, and there are people down that tunnel.
If your lives are in danger, why don't you come out?
Everyone's life is now in danger, unfortunately. 1,000 children will die today because of climate change.
Euston became a focal point for the anti-HS2 movement. When it emerged, 11 trees would be chopped down to make way for a new taxi rank. The protest camp has been here since August, but this morning HS2 took temporary possession of the gardens, backed by a High Court warrant which allowed the evictions to begin. Dorothea is a local church warden and an enthusiastic supporter of the campaign against the new high-speed railway.
I am so proud and happy about these wonderful, wonderful young people who are trying to save our trees.
But HS2 takes a different view, saying in a statement, these protests are a danger to the safety of the protesters, our staff and the general public, and put unnecessary strain on the emergency services during a pandemic. For much of the day, the bailiffs concentrated on the tree dwellers. But they managed to nab one would-be tunnel occupier just moments before he lowered himself into the ground. He was bundled away and then let go.
I was about to go in the tunnel. I ain't gonna lie, I was about to go to the tunnel. I literally was. I was just gonna drop down there, 15-foot drop. I don't care, I would have just dropped down.
HS2 has brought in specialists used to working in confined spaces to try to rid the site of all protesters. But the hardcore activists are literally holed up in fragile tunnels, making it a cautious, delicate operation. Simon Harris, ITV News, Euston.
Good evening, I'm Duncan Golostani. 7 weeks after the first COVID vaccinations went into the arms of the most vulnerable, London is still lagging behind in the numbers of people vaccinated. And the reason still isn't clear. Doctors are suggesting supply issues and take-up in ethnic minority populations could be possible explanations. There is hope, though, that more mass vaccination sites, like one in Westfield Shopping Centre, will increase the take-up in the capital. From there, our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
Please ensure you're wearing a mask.
London's shopping centres haven't had much on offer lately. Lockdown has left Westfield in East London almost deserted. But outside a former IKEA click and collect, they were queuing for the latest must-have, a COVID jab, because the store is now one of London's new vaccine centres.
The injection? Fantastic. I don't feel anything at all.
Yeah, I couldn't wait to get it done.
I was looking forward to getting it. It's one down, one to go, as they say.
The NHS says Westfield was an obvious choice.
I think it's really important to have the vaccine right in the centre of the community. It's somewhere where the people know and can recognise and can get to. You know, they want to get the vaccine as quickly and as easily as possible, and we want that too.
Lockdown is extracting a high price from the retail industry, so this could be a glimpse into the future.
I see very much the health and wellbeing sector becoming a bigger part of our centre. Essentially, we're a community hub, we're more than a retail destination.
But the appearance of pop-up vaccine centres can't disguise one sobering fact. Despite having the largest population, London still lags behind as the worst region after vaccinating only 730,000 people. A far cry from the less populated northeastern Yorkshire, where 1 million people have now received the first dose. and the Midlands, which has 3 million fewer residents than London, but came top with 1.2 million people vaccinated. There are likely to be a number of reasons.
Most of the vaccines in London are being delivered through hub centres rather than GP practices or pharmacies. So until we get these vaccines into GP practices and pharmacies, we want to see the real mobilisation of the community.
It's not the only concern in London. Persuading members of some communities that the vaccine is both safe and acceptable to their religious beliefs is proving a challenge, which is one reason why jabs are now available at this Hindu temple in North London. The NHS Vaccine Centre at the Swami Narayan Temple in Kingsbury is aiming to inoculate 1,300 people a day. The trustees believe it's the first Hindu temple in the world to take on this role.
By having this COVID centre within this site and with the encouragement and the messaging of our spiritual leaders and our priests, we are hoping to dispel these false information about the COVID vaccine.
Yesterday there were still 6,000 COVID patients in London's hospitals, many of them gravely ill, but the number is going down. It's dropped by 17% in a week. Simon Harris, ITV News.